Hello class, I'm here at our Revel site. I'm going to look at Chapter 13. Still working on Chapter 13, Abstract Classes. And I'm going to go to my table of contents and bring the book up. Item 13.6 talks about the comparable interface, and that's what we're going to do with our menu item today. So the comparable interface lets us define a compareTo method for comparing objects in Java. Thinking about interfaces, this is a type of interface. This is the USB interface. So if I want to connect using a USB device, I'm forced to use the specifications for the USB interface. I can't just do whatever I like. That's a lot like a Java interface in that it enforces some sort of rule or makes us follow the design patterns that the designer wanted us to follow. So the comparable interface is one example of that. The comparable interface is one that exists in Java. It's not one that we have to create ourselves, and they show it to us here in the Revel content. And when we're looking at this comparable interface definition, notice that an interface definition is very similar to a class definition. It just says the word interface instead of the word class. In this example, they use a generic. And if you notice in our textbook, they say, as you know about generics. Well, you don't know about generics yet. That's not going to be for a couple more chapters. So at this point, just know that wherever we have this less than and greater than symbol, what's stuck inside of there is going to be some sort of data type, or maybe even our class that we're working with, because our class object is basically now its own type of item that we can use as a generic within the greater than and less than symbols. So that's what we'll be doing, and don't worry, we'll get to that in chapter 19. It shouldn't be too hard to code in this chapter. Now in the interface, what is declared in the Java interface is that if you implement my comparable interface, then you must create a compareTo method. That compareTo method that you implement must return an integer, and it should accept a parameter of a generic type, normally an object. So we'll see how we do this. Now, because the comparable interface is already available in Java, and it allows us to do a compareTo method, or forces us to, I guess, a lot of our Java class types already have that implemented. So for example, if we're working with integers, in the integer class in Java, we would be able to find this information that the Java integer class implements the comparable interface, and it expects to compare to another integer. Now, in our integer class, because we implement the comparable interface, we must include a compareTo method. And in our compareTo method, we're kind of defining how we sort integers. How do we figure out which integer is bigger than another? Now realize this is an integer object with the uppercase I, not just an integer variable like we would have with a lowercase I. So we're not talking about a native variable here. We're talking about an actual instance of the integer class. In the compareTo method, what Java does is say, hey, this integer that I'm working with, take it and subtract the integer that was passed and return that value. So not too complicated. What the calling method needs to know is if the value returned is negative, then the value here was less than what we were comparing it to. If the return value is 0, they were equal. And if the return value is positive, then our value that we're working with was larger than the value that was passed in that we're comparing to. So that's the rules of the compareTo method. If what we're comparing to is greater than our current instance, we're going to return a negative number. If they're equal, 0. And if our current instance is greater, then it'll be a positive number. Now in Ravel, they show us the integer class and the big integer class, how those signatures are. They don't show us all the actual implementation. The string object implements the comparable interface, and so does the date object in Java. So all of those classes already implement the comparable interface. What does that mean for us? First of all, let's take a look at this quick example. If we were to code this item here, we have an integer with a value of 3, and we would like to compare that to another new integer with a value of 5. What are we going to get back? A negative result. Now, maybe -2. I don't know that these outputs, they're supposed to, but that looks like not quite right, huh? Now the next one, but no matter what, we're going to get a negative value, and that's the important thing. Our integer is less than the integer we're comparing to, so we're going to receive a negative value. If you notice, we can't really depend on that as superlat. All we know is it's less than 0. That's what we can depend on. The next line of code, we take the string ABC and we compare that to the string ABE, and indeed it is less than, and it would be 2 less than, so that could be correct. Then we set 2 dates. We have 2 date objects here, date 1 and date 2, and then we're going to output the information if we take date 1 and we compare it to date 2. So we can use all those different data types. Because all of those classes implement the comparable interface, we can take arrays of those classes and sort them. So in this example, we create a string array of city names, and we use the arrays.sort method to sort our cities array. When we print it out, you'll see that our array is now in sorted order: Atlanta, Boston, etc. Then we create an array of big integers. Again, we don't have them in order, but we can sort them using the arrays.sort method, and then when we output them, they'll be in order. So what I'm saying is, if these classes did not implement the comparable interface, the java.sort utility would not be able to sort their data, because it wouldn't know how to sort that information. We have to implement the comparable interface if we want to use a .sort. So for example, if we want to create an array of objects of a type that we've created, like our rectangle. Here we're creating an object that is a comparable rectangle. We could just update our other rectangle class, that would be fine too, but we're just extending that original rectangle class to create a comparable rectangle. Now our comparable rectangle implements the comparable interface. And what does it want to compare within the generic parameters? It wants to compare 2 comparable rectangles. So that's what we have. We're saying that's what we're going to compare here. Then in our constructor, we just pull in the width and height. Don't worry about that too much. But here is our compareTo method that we've implemented. And in our compareTo method, we say, for a comparable rectangle, the way to decide which one is bigger or which one is greater is to use my getArea method. So I'm going to say if getArea of this current triangle, or rectangle, I'm sorry, is greater than the area of the rectangle that was passed to me, then return 1. Return a positive number. My current object is greater than the object I'm comparing to. Else, if that's not true, I'm going to use the getArea of my current object again, and if it's less than the area of the new rectangle, I'll return -1, and otherwise I'll assume they're equal, so I'll return 0. Now, because my comparable rectangle class implements the compareTo method and the comparable interface, I can sort rectangles, an array of rectangles. So let's see down here in the main, I'm creating an array of comparable rectangles. One's 3.4 and 5.4, one is 13.24, so there's some weird off sizes. Then I'm going to take that array of rectangles and sort it and see if I can output that information. And because I've implemented the compareTo method in my class with the comparable interface, the sort method is able to know how to sort instances of my class in a certain order. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of an advanced Java topic here where we're saying, because you made this connection, you implemented this interface, you made this connection to being able to compare things, you put in that compareTo method, I'm able to sort objects of your class type. Now, I'll be right back with another video and we'll continue our menu class and add some information in some instances and use the compareTo so we can sort. So, look forward to seeing you then.